O'Reilly. Hope you're all doing very well this morning. So, I'm here to help you with your business English. I'm here to help you with all things related to English pronunciation, vocabulary. I'm going to try and do my best to get you advanced this morning, okay? Wednesday morning. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 8:30 to 9:30, you have an hour with me, and I'm going to be bringing you all different types of things. So, what have I got for you this morning? Well, we'll look at a news roundup, see what's happening in the headlines. Then we will be focusing on expressions for your financial English, frases en inglés. So, I'm going to be doing a bit of Spanish. You can test and see what my Spanish looks like because we'll be doing some translation for you. I'm going to be looking at business English expressions, dealing with interruptions when you're in a call or in a meeting. How do we deal with that? And some animal idioms. We've had sports idioms. Now we're going to look at some animal idioms. And also, if we have time, I may look at some business expressions. That will come in anyway as we're looking at things. I want to look in particular today also at Netflix, what has been happening with the streaming giant. And that's it. And then towards the end, I will be focusing on questions or questions that you may have put to me during the stream or things that come to my head. Okay, and finally, another thing I want to focus on, we will see in the news, is what happened exactly in Manchester yesterday. Stay tuned for that. It is Morning Coffee with me, James O Reilly, helping you improve your business English. And of course, in association with LK Formación, tailor-made solutions for your business. Right, so let's jump in and we're going to look first at what was happening in the news. So I'm going to minimize myself over here because sometimes I forget. I'm going to bring myself down here. And then we're going to jump in and see what we can look at, okay? I'm going to be focusing on what was happening when we were asleep. Let's catch up on the news. So I had it here. While you were sleeping. Okay, I'm just going to make sure that I am small enough and that you guys can see the news. Okay, I'll be looking at some vocabulary here, pronunciation, helping you in every way with your English this morning. Let's jump in. While you were sleeping, Ukraine, Chinese diplomat and Biden, the news of the night. First of all, Russia acknowledges that the situation of its troops in Ukraine is tense. The situation on the Ukrainian territory of the special military operation can be described as tense, said General Sergei Surovikin. I have absolutely butchered that name. My apologies to any Russian speakers. Surovikin, who has been in charge of operations in Ukraine for 10 days. So when you are a business person, when you are a manager, you are in charge of something. So generally when you explain your job title and you manage people, you'll say, I'm in charge of this department, I'm in charge of taking care of projects, I'm in charge of, this is how we say this in English. Radio Free Europe reports the enemy is constantly trying to attack the positions of Russian troops, particularly in the east of the country, he said during an interview on Russian television. Ukraine has indeed been accumulating victories on the ground in recent weeks, taking back entire swaths of its territory. Swaths, let me highlight this for you. Not a common word. You won't need this too much in English, but it just means big areas. From the occupying forces, depends which way you look at it. Is it occupying or liberating? I'm not making any, I'm not being subjective here. Surovikine also said that Russia was preparing to evacuate civilians from the city of Kherson in the south, located in one of the 4 regions illegally annexed by Moscow 3 weeks ago, adds the site. So, of course, it's Radio Free Europe, and they are saying illegal But of course, if I were reading from a Russian newspaper, it would be necessary instead of illegal, and we're looking at a different angle. I'm going to skip this because I want to look at the next. Biden promises Democratic voters to legislate abortion. If the Democrats win in the midterm legislative elections in November, Joe Biden promised on Tuesday to do everything possible to enshrine the right to abortion in federal law, reports National Public Radio, NPR. The choices and the stakes of this election are clear, he declared during a speech before the Democratic Party. If the right to abortion is important to you, go vote. This to keep this promise and have a small chance of passing such a law, however, the Democrats will have to obtain a clear victory in the elections and that they notably win 2 additional senator seats, says the American radio. Well, this is politicians either making promises as usual or phrasing language to make it sound like they're making a promise, but in fact it's pretty much not in their hands. Now, this is what I'm going to be showing, talking about now, what happened in Manchester, and I have a video that I would like to show, and you will see the captions. Protester beaten in Manchester. Chinese diplomat implicated. London on Tuesday accused the Chinese consulate in Manchester of having, or consul in Manchester, of having participated in the violence perpetrated on Sunday against pro-democracy demonstrators. In videos of the incident, the consul Zheng Xihuan can be seen destroying banners and grabbing one of the protesters by the hair and dragging him into the consulate compound to be beaten. Less said, the better. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to the video of this. This is quite interesting, and I will also make a comment about it later. What we're going to do is have a look at this video. So let me jump in, and I'm going to expand the video. You guys will read the captions. I just want to make sure that I can perhaps make myself a little bit smaller, and then we'll jump back in. Okay, let's have a look at this video. You guys can read the captions. Hey. This is the consul. The fighting started when unidentified men attempted to remove this photo, taunting Xi Jinping. The protesters outside the consulate warned security that consular staff threatened to destroy it.
You said you will do it.
At the minute, I've got no problems with the picture there, as long as this paper is fine.
A Facebook Live feed captured the moment the activist attempted to take the banner back. So here one of the protesters was dragged inside the consular compound, and I'm not sure if the police are able to enter. This is in Manchester in the United Kingdom. And you can see they are beating him, pulling hair.
幾個啲大陸佬走出嚟咁啊，燒毀我哋啲物品啦。跟住中途咧就我哋 stop 佢哋嘅時候咧，咁啊俾佢扯入去，咁啊拳打腳踢，係啦，咁啊後尾就係有警察。
我不了解你提到的有关的情况。中国驻英使领馆一贯遵守驻在国法律，我们也希望英方按照维也纳外交关系公约和维也纳领事关系公约的规定，为中国驻英使领馆正常履职提供便利。
Okay, so that's the situation that happened in Manchester yesterday. It was in relation to people protesting against the protesting outside the Chinese consul, and I'd like to get your opinions. This is a situation where Hong Kong, once they're asking for more democracy in Hong Kong, it is a situation that we saw a lot in the news in recent years, and the Chinese people, and as you could see in the video, the people from Hong Kong calling them mainlanders. The mainland is if you live on an island and then you live near the mainland. So it's very interesting. Another thing I noticed about people from Hong Kong is very, very often they have English first names. So English first names, and then their surnames or family names are distinctly Chinese. Taking off the headphones. Interesting there. Also, I want to plug, which is give advertising for The Economist, who at the moment are doing a fantastic documentary series on the podcast about Xi Jinping. Terrible pronunciation, but it is the general secretary, like the president or the prime minister of China. Very, very interesting documentary podcast series about him. About 8 episodes. I'm on number 4 or number 5 at the moment. Very interesting because we see China is very much in the news at the moment, and there is this idea that of creating a fear about China. Its economy is probably number 1 in the world at the moment, and very interesting story or documentary of their leader, a kind of story where he grew up as what the name of the documentary is, the prince or the princelings. These princelings were kind of the children of the in the time of Mao, they won the revolution, and the children of these people who won the communist revolution, they grew up privileged, let's say. They went to privileged schools, so they were seen as kind of little princes. And it shows his then growing up, but not everything goes very well. It's very interesting. I do recommend it. You can find it free on your podcasts from The Economist, which I do recommend indeed to improve your listening English as well. That is, again, The Economist, and the documentary is called The Prince. Moving on now, I'm going to look at, where was it? Financial expressions. So let me get my financial expressions for you. I'm going to find it here. My financial expressions. Here we go. So I will be giving you the translation as well in Spanish, because most of you, the vast majority of you are here in Spain. So for those of you who already know, my apologies, because you will be able to know the translation, but there are some people who might not know. So I'm going to go through some of financial vocabulary, helping you with your financial vocabulary this morning. So the first word is income. Income. Look at my pronunciation as we go through as well. Income is ingresos. Then the next word is profits, beneficios. And don't confuse, it says here, no confundir con la anterior. Profits are your beneficios and income is your ingresos. Cash flow. Cash flow. Flujo de caja. O flujo de efectivo. I'm hoping that this is from, I assume that this is from Spain, what I gathered that it was from the end, but if it's not, let me know if you have a different opinion on what the translation is. Cash flow, flujo de caja o flujo de efectivo. Cash flow. Bottom line. Resultados finales de la empresa. Bottom line. Fixed variable costs. Fixed or variable costs. Costes fijos variables. Fixed or variable costs. Costes fijos variables o variables. Equity. Equity. Capital de la empresa. Next one is important for pronunciation. Debt. D-E-B-T. But the B is silent. Debt. Deuda. Accounting. Contabilidad. Audit. Auditoría. Or auditoría. I'm doing my best with the pronunciation, okay? I am a learner as well. Okay, balance sheet. Balance financiero. Balance sheet. Topic I have been talking about with my students in the last few days is investment, inversión. If it's particularly risky, it's a risky investment, arriesgada. And if it is more sure or not risky, it's a conservative investment. And you have risky investment, conservative investment, and then you have your investment strategy. Merger, también llamado takeover. Fusión empresarial, merger or a takeover. Happens quite a lot with some of my students recently. There has been a merger or a takeover of their company. Promotion, ascenso. Normally brings with it a rise in salary or a salary increase, which is aumento de sueldo, salary increase. But you can also say an increase or a raise. Often you'll see in films, when you're watching films, let's say in Netflix, which we'll talk about later, is somebody would like a raise from their boss, which is aumento de sueldo. Bonus is bono. Company car, coche de empresa. Health insurance, seguro médico, which is very common in American businesses, because if you work in the UK, it's like here in Spain, healthcare is free with the NHS, National Health Service. However, when you go to the United States, many of you will know healthcare is private, and this is important to have this included in your contract. Otherwise, you will be paying a lot of money for any medical procedure. Holiday pay, paga de vacaciones, is holiday pay. Leave, baja. Está de baja. He's on leave. She's on leave. What type of leave? Sick leave. Está de baja is if somebody is sick. What about for pregnancy? Maternity leave. Paternity leave for a male like me. Maternity for the mother. Paternity leave for the father. Okay, and here we have baja por maternidad o paternidad. Okay, and sick leave is por enfermedad. So that's something that I found quite difficult when I was up to recently, because it just sounds so different, I suppose. Baja, and I'm thinking, it's down, and I found it quite difficult. And I'm sure perhaps for you guys, leave might sound a bit strange, but that's what it is: sick leave, maternity leave, or paternity leave, or for some other reason. Okay, then we have hours worked, horas trabajadas. Notice the way I say worked. The ed, when it has a hard ending, ed, like at the end of the past, hours worked. If it has a hard ending like work, then the ed will sound like a t, worked. Because if I say the d, worked, it It just sounds so bizarre, so strange in English. It's not good. So this is something many people make the mistake of and need to improve. So other examples would be, let's say, sounds like s, sh, ch, t. All these k, ch, s. Kicked, worked. To wish, desear. Wished, not wished, wished. And this should come quite naturally for you, okay? Wished, kicked. Netflix. I watched, Netflixed. Netflixed. Okay. So those hard endings will make your ed ending sound like a T. That's the natural sound you will hear. You don't even have to work at it. It should just come naturally. I'll talk about different endings. Okay, day to day, día a día. Okay, when you're going to the bank or you're going to the ATM. What is an ATM? Where is the nearest ATM? ¿Dónde está el cajero más cercano? So the ATM stands for automatic. Nobody really knows this, except for me, because I just remember somehow. Is the cajero más... Okay, cajero. So if you want to take money, and often people, I know in the UK, we will say, do you know where there is a hole in the wall? That's kind of social English for ATM. But if you say ATM, you're absolutely fine. Excuse me, I'm looking for an ATM. Do you know if there's one near here or nearby? Okay, if you're talking to someone, if you're in the bank, which window should I go to? ¿A qué ventanilla debería ir? Which window? The window, if you go to the train station, if you go to the bank, if you go to do some government business, you're looking at going to a window or a desk, and up they have the little window, the ventanilla. So which window should I go to? My credit card was stolen. Me han robado la... what is it? Me han robado la tarjeta de crédito. My credit card was stolen, or my cards were stolen. Okay. Enter your PIN. Introduzca su número PIN. I've forgotten my PIN number. No recuerdo el número de PIN de mi tarjeta. We could just say, I've forgotten my PIN. Could I have a statement, please? ¿Podría darme un balance mensual, por favor? Could I have a statement, please? Okay, 2 words coming up now. Deposit. I'd like to deposit this check, please. Me gustaría ingresar este cheque, por favor. Deposit, ingresar. And then the next word you need to know is sacar, withdraw. Withdraw. When we're talking about finance, it's deposit, withdraw. When you go to an ATM, you will see an option in English of withdraw cash, deposit cash. Those are the 2 main words you need to know. Deposit, put in, and withdraw, take out. And I'll just do a couple more. I'd like to send money to Spain. Me gustaría enviar dinero a España. You guys know this. I would, and also when we say I would like, try to contract. I'd like to send money to Spain. I'd like to open a business or personal account. Me gustaría abrir una cuenta de negocios o personal. I'd like to open a business personal account. I'd like to open a business account. I'd like to open a business account. I'd like to open an investment account. I'd like to order some foreign currency. Me gustaría pedir moneda extranjera. I'd like to order some foreign currency. Okay, if that's not common for you, and it's more common for you to ring Globo or these type of places for food, un pedido is I'd like to make an order, or I'd like to order some food. Okay, so when you want to make a pedido, you are making an order. All right, then I hope that's been useful for you. Now, I am going to go over and talk to you guys, or I'll talk to you right here about Netflix. During the summer, Netflix, the streaming giant, so many of you have on your TVs, Netflix wasn't doing very well. The number of subscriptions was falling. They had reached a peak, which means the top, at some point, and then the subscribers were falling. So what did they do? They decided that they were going to introduce a payment scheme. So let me see if I can bring up this article that I had about Netflix. Yes. And I'm going to make sure you guys can read as well with me. I'm going to make myself a bit smaller here so you guys can read with me. You don't have to read. I'm going to be talking to you about it. Let me get over to it. Netflix launches a new subscription plan, including advertisements. So at the beginning, as we know, Netflix right now, there are no advertisements, and this is fantastic for everybody. This is great. To cope with sluggish results, the American streaming giant has just announced a new, less expensive subscription offer, which includes advertisements, an unprecedented formula that concerns many countries such as the US, United States, France, and or the United Kingdom. Okay, this is quite interesting. Unprecedented means not seen before, not done before. Moving down. The plan has been under consideration for some time. The announcement has been official since October 13. Netflix is launching a new subscription plan, reports The Guardian from the UK, and it will be available in 12 countries, including the United States, France, and the United Kingdom. On this side of the channel, it will be billed at €5.99 per month. So when they talk about the channel, because this is from The Guardian, the channel is what we call, the English call, the sea between France and the UK. They call it the English Channel. Of course, that doesn't work for the French. They call it, in Spanish, it would be La Manga, La Manche. So it has a different name. I'm not even sure. I'm pretty sure English people do not know it has another name, and perhaps the French don't know it has another name in English, but I do. And I think in Spanish you use the French term, like the sleeve, la manga, if I'm right. La manche, that's what it means in French. $5.99, that's how we would say this price. $5.99. €5.99. That's how we would say this, not €5.99. €5.99 per month, which will make it the least expensive offered by the American streaming giant. In addition to certain options made inaccessible, the great innovation lies in the presence of advertisements, the press release evoking an average of 4 to 5 minutes per hour. Okay, so essentially, it's going to be like TV in the old days, and we're going to have advertisements. But it's interesting what they are going to do with the advertisements, because below it says what they are going to do. Before that, Netflix has staunchly opposed since launching the stream in 2007. They didn't want to do this, but the numbers have stalled. Stalled is reach a plateau. The numbers are not going up anymore. They're not going down, but they're stalled. Subscriber numbers hovering. Hovering is what like a drone will do, just kind of staying at this height in the air. It's hovering around 221 million. Okay, moving down. The advertisements, well, I will tell you what was going to happen with the advertisements. Is what they are going to do with the advertisements is, if you are somebody who wants to advertise on the platform, you can say, listen, I don't want my advertisement to be done when there is any violence. I don't want my advertisement around any violence, or I don't want my advertisement near any sexual scenes or any of that kind of thing. I want it away from those. So you can choose where you want to put your advertisement, perhaps in the middle, at the beginning, near the end. And also that's how you can calibrate your choice. As it says here, calibrated choice of advertisements. Interesting. Would it be something that you guys would be interested in? Would it bother you so much? I still, when I'm watching YouTube, these advertisements come up all the time. I kind of wait for the first one to finish and then there's a second one. But I am considering paying. This is essentially what we do with YouTube at the moment, but I am considering paying just not to have the ads. They are absolutely driving me crazy and I don't think I can tolerate it anymore. That's what's going on with Netflix, and that was just a few days ago. And then I realized that we have a new Netflix article, which is Netflix is returning to growth, according to CNN. Netflix in the last few months has grown. We saw here, let me go back, 221 million. And that was during the summer, I believe. Let me see. Let me see. October 14th. And this one is from today, I believe. Today. 221. And it has grown between July and September by 2.4 million. So it wasn't expected. They wanted to put advertising, and now they have actually grown. Their subscribers have grown. It now has 223 million and expects to gain another 4.5 million in the fourth quarter. So when we talk about finance, we're talking about quarters. The first quarter, the second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. With these numbers, these figures have sent the share price up 14%. Okay, I was talking to my students yesterday about investing. We were talking about acciones, which are shares. What would you invest in? What would you like to invest in? Would it be risky investment or would it be a conservative investment? Most students prefer conservative. Me too. Your money is more secure. But do you think investing in Netflix is good now? Has it peaked? It's gone up 14%. Interesting. I don't know much about the stock exchange or the stock market, La Bolsa stock market. So maybe some words there are acciones, which are share, inversión, investment. Stock exchange or stock market is La Bolsa. So stop the hemorrhage of customers that caused unease at investors and raise questions about So before, during the summer, people were uneasy, people were worried, maybe selling their shares, and now the share price has gone up again. So interesting times at Netflix. Would you guys be interested in paying less and having advertisements? I think the value is already okay, but the problem is you have other situations like you have other platforms like Disney Plus, HBO, I can't remember, Netflix, obviously, Amazon Prime. So you're going to be, what we say is shelling out a lot of money for those. Okay, you're going to be paying a lot of money for those, but you can reduce it if you get advertising. Not for me, definitely not. The advertising, absolutely not interesting for me. But Netflix, bit of a crisis during the summer. Between September, but now they are improving again against the odds. People didn't expect it. So interesting news there for Netflix in business. Let's leave that up there. And now I'm going to jump over to something else that I wanted to look at. That was Netflix. And now I'm going to look at let's look at some idioms in relation to animals, a bit light-hearted. See if you can remember some today and try and use one if you can. So let me go across to it. Animal idioms. Okay, give me a second. Here we go. So I'm going to give you some animal idioms and let you know what they mean. So number one is let the cat out of the bag. To let the cat out of the bag, what does that mean? It means to reveal a secret. Okay, if you want something to be kept a secret and then somebody tells the secret, they have let the cat out of the bag. Okay, don't let the cat out of the bag. It's very important that we keep this a secret. Oh no. Netflix, for example, they have an idea to do advertising and then somebody hears about it. It's because somebody let the cat out of the bag. Perhaps it's the same in Spanish. I'm not entirely sure. You guys let me know. Okay, number 2 is as hungry as a horse. As hungry as a horse. So, 1 second. Put this up here. So, animal idioms. Number 1, let the cat out of the bag. And number 2 is I'm as hungry as a horse. Really, really hungry. I remember saying before, more commonly, I could eat a horse. Rather than say, I'm as hungry as a horse. But you get the idea. I'm as hungry as a horse. But I would say, I'm so hungry, I could eat a horse. And then to make it even more extreme, you'd say, I could eat a horse between 2 bread bands. Basically, in a bocadillo, between 2 pieces of bread. So I'm so hungry, I could eat a horse between 2 bread bands. So there you go. That's a horse in relation to hunger. Drink like a fish. This is related to alcohol. So if you drink like a fish, it's somebody who drinks a lot of beer or can drink a lot of alcohol. She drinks like a fish. Maybe she has an alcohol problem or something. But when somebody drinks heavily or they go to the bar or something, they drink a lot. They can drink like a fish. Next one is when something is taboo, perhaps, or you don't want to talk about it, or if you do, it's going to cause a lot of problems, and that is to open a can of worms. Worms are gusanos, and if you can imagine, a can is a lata. You open a can of worms, all the worms escape. It's going to be very difficult to get the worms back into the can, and it's going to be really a mess. So if you open a can of worms, it could be like raising a topic around people that's going to be very conflictive. And a situation might be in a meeting where you start talking about the problems with certain people or the problems of men and women's salaries. It could be working at home. It's to open a can of worms means to talk about something that's going to be very problematic and very difficult to resolve, a very difficult topic. Number 5, I mentioned this in the last stream, to have a frog in one's throat. And that means to have difficulty speaking because of a dry throat. Your throat is dry and you find it difficult to speak. You have a frog in your throat. Here it says to have a frog in one's throat. I mentioned this yesterday when I was talking to some students that we often use this as the third person. Normally would say, I have a frog in my throat, or to have a frog in your throat. But here it's written to have a frog in one's throat. It's talking about the third person. And this comes from the Old French. Not the Old French, because they use it nowadays. But for English, it's considered quite formal. And I'll give you an example. What can you do in Paris? The French would say, on peut aller au cinéma, on peut aller à la Tour Eiffel, on peut prendre un bateau, on peut. And that means, in English, one can, but normally what we say is, you can go to the cinema, you can go to the Eiffel Tower, you can take a ride on a boat, you can. But if you want to say it more formally or more elegantly, like let's say the Queen of England, the late Queen of England, she would say one can visit the Eiffel Tower, one can go to the cinema, one can take a boat ride. It is still used. You can use it if you want to use more formal, elegant language. It's nice to know. I think it sounds nice. I don't use it very often, but it's good to know, and it does exist in English. So, to have a frog in one's throat. Have ants in your pants. Ants are formigas, and your pants are your underwear. Pants in the United States are pantalones. That's your pants. But in the UK, we say trousers, and pants would be considered underwear. So, not something that we talk, I suppose, much. If I'm talking to an American from the United States and say, ants in your pants, they probably assume trousers. I assume underwear, okay? But ants in your pants is to be restless, okay? It's when you can't sit down, you're not focused, you're moving around, you're restless. We say restless. And that is to have ants in your pants. Like, relax, you've got ants in your pants, relax. And finally is number 7, to smell a rat. To suspect a trick or deception. So you could be doing, you might be doing negotiations perhaps with a company. Netflix, it's here in the background. You're doing negotiations and there's something just not right. There's something not right in these negotiations. You think they could be trying to trick you or cheat you, deceive you, and you say to your partner in private, I smell a rat. Something's not right. They're up to something. They're doing something. They're trying to deceive us. I smell a rat. Okay, that's how we say that. Let me move in. Where else can I help you this morning? James O Reilly here with you for coffee time. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at this time. So we're into our last, I can't even tell the time. Into our last 15 minutes. And I'm going to look at dealing with interruptions. Dealing with interruptions. You're doing a presentation, or you're doing a class, or you're in a meeting, and you've got some people who want to interrupt you. If they want to go ahead and interrupt, it's a type of meeting where everybody can go in. Obviously, that's fine. But this could be a presentation, for example, and you do not want to be interrupted. So how do you tratar? How do you deal with this? Okay, so if somebody interrupts with a point and say, what about this? And you could say, giving you some examples here. So if you are interrupted, you say, and somebody says something, you say, we'll be examining this point in more detail later on. Okay, we'll be examining this point in more detail later on. Okay, what about streaming in Asia or something? You say, we'll be examining this point later on in the presentation. Later on, or I'll come back to your question later on in the talk. A talk is like a presentation. A talk. Un discurso. A talk. So I'll come back to that point later in the talk. Or come back to that question. I'd like to deal with that question later. To deal with something is very, very common to say in English, and it's very good if you can know this, to deal with something. You're dealing with people in your work, you're dealing with your work, you can deal with a question later on in your presentation. I'll deal with your question later on, or I'll deal with your question at the end of the presentation, or perhaps we could discuss this point at the end. I'll be discussing those points at the end, or one of the expressions that I used before is to circle back. We can circle back to this point at the end. So just quickly, again, when people interrupt, a few ideas in English. We will be examining this point in more detail later on. I'll come back to your question later in my talk. I'd like to deal with that question later, if I may. If I may is if I can. Perhaps we could discuss the point at the end. Okay, a few examples of avoiding engaging with people in the moment. You want to, you don't want to be interrupted, and you want to continue. Okay. And finally, I want to look at some business English expressions. So we have informal and formal. This is from Cambridge English, and we're going to first look at the informal, and then we'll give you some ideas how to say it more formally, if you're interested. So, nice to meet you. It's a pleasure to meet you. Nice to meet you is, I think that's what I say most of the time. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Hi, I'm James. Nice to meet you. Yep. Nice to meet you. It's a pleasure to meet you. I normally would say this at the end. You can say it at the start. Say, it was a pleasure meeting you. But it's a pleasure to meet you. It is nice. It sounds very nice. Thanks a lot. In an email, for example, thanks a lot. Or you could say, I appreciate your help. I appreciate your help. Can you, in an email, for example, can you so-and-so, can you do this? Can you, you could say, I'd really appreciate it if you could send it to me by Tuesday. By Tuesday means before Tuesday. You need to be careful though in English with appreciate it, because if I were to say I'd really appreciate it if you could, I say it can be ambiguous, because sometimes people find it is kind of, remember when we were talking about British English and what they say and what they mean? Sometimes I'd appreciate it can sometimes seem aggressive, but it isn't. And if you put it in a nice context, it isn't. For example, if my name is James, if you were to call me by my Spanish name, which would be Jaime, I said I'd appreciate it if you called me James, it means I'm a bit annoyed. I don't like it. If I was saying it in a nice way, I'd say I'd prefer it if you called me James. But if I say I'd appreciate it if you called me James, perhaps to an English person that would sound more aggressive. It's interesting. It's kind of these indirect things that we have in English. Don't forget informal. Formal. I'd like to remind you that don't forget you need to have the report by Tuesday. I'd like to remind you that you need the report by Tuesday. Or I'd like to remind you that we need the report by Tuesday. Informal. I need some help with. Formal. I require some assistance with. Informal. I'm sorry, I can't come to the meeting. Formal. I'm afraid I won't be able to attend the meeting. That's fine for Spanish speakers, because you guys generally say attend. So, oh no, you normally say assist. Assist. It's more normal in English to say attend a meeting. And even more normal to say come. Because my students will contact me and they'll say, I'm sorry, I can't assist the class. Normally, you might, if you're comfortable with me, you'll say, I'm sorry, James, I can't come to class today because I have a meeting. And then more formally would be, sorry, James, I can't attend your class today. Not assist. It's not common. It's a false friend. Like I would probably say, no puedo atender, but what I mean to say is no puedo asistir. Right, it's a false friend. As soon as possible, informal. Formal, at your earliest convenience. We are worried about. Informal, we are worried about the results. We are concerned about is more formal. We are concerned about the results. Netflix, having a meeting. The numbers are, we are worried about the numbers. We are worried about the figures. But more formal would be, we are concerned about the figures. And finally, sorry for not being able to attend your English class. You could say, please accept my apologies for not attending your, please accept my apologies. Okay, nice and formal. If you remember any of those, try and use them. I think one of the takeaway points from that right now would be, remember, assist is a false friend. What you really want to say is attend. Okay, I hope you remember. If you don't worry, it's not too bad. We learn from our mistakes. It's important to make mistakes when learning English. If I can make you feel any better, for any of you who have meetings with English people, most of us have not learned a foreign language, so sometimes we find things strange, but we're generally quite relaxed about, I speak as a native English speaker, just in general when people speak English, we're not so, we don't expect the best English. And like I mentioned before, don't feel that you need to apologize for your English, because we don't even speak foreign languages. So you're apologizing for your bad English, and we don't even speak a foreign language. So we really feel that that's strange, that you would apologize for speaking a second language, and we have no idea of second languages. Okay, I live in Spain. I tried to learn French, but most people, we begin learning languages late. So we don't have your experience of starting early. Like my kids are in school here. All the kids are learning English. Perhaps when you guys were learning English in school, you didn't think it was so important, but you learned early. We start learning at like 13, 14, and it's just for fun, really. It is. It's not seen as serious. So don't apologize for your English. Don't feel bad. Take your time and just enjoy learning something every day. I'm here to help you guys. I enjoy it. I enjoy learning Spanish. And I think you have had enough trouble in your school lives that you can just come here and enjoy learning English with me, hopefully, and we just learn even just one word. If you learn one word with every class, that's 3 words a week. That's not bad. That's not bad. If you ask yourself, how much am I learning every week? Most people haven't done anything during the week. So if you learn even just 3 words, it's fantastic, because normally we always use the same words anyway, you know. So there I am preaching to you guys. Okay, so let me just check something here. And I'm going to just check and make sure that check out the live stream and just see if any of you guys have asked me something. It's not common. Like I said, I am on LinkedIn right now and I'm on YouTube right now. If you want to look at the subtitles, later you will see those on YouTube. If you find it too difficult to understand my English, later you will see the subtitles come up, and it can be easier for you. Okay, so thank you for your comment, Mikun. Nice to see you there on YouTube, and for all of you watching on LinkedIn as well. Give me any comments you like. I will respond to you guys in the comments. I hope you're learning, and remember, and this is, I think Mikun mentioned this to me before, or somebody, and I think it's quite true. Push yourselves in listening. You don't always need the subtitles. You won't understand everything, but once you get the idea, more and more and more, you will understand more and more. It's how I've been learning in Spanish. It has worked for me. I'm sure it will work for you. You don't always need subtitles if you want to push yourself a bit more. If you need the subtitles, jump over to YouTube a bit later and you will see them there. So once again, this has been Coffee Morning with James O'Reilly in association with LK Formation. I will be here again on Friday morning to help you guys and to interact with you guys. So until then, have a wonderful day, and I'll catch up with you on Friday morning. Okay, all the best. Bye.